So with that, we're going to call our next panel up. And as they're coming up here, I do want to make something, a point that have been asked to make and remind everyone. So as you can get the flavor of this summit, it goes through the spectrum of individuals coming through the justice system. But we are so used to saying they and them and those people. We can't ever forget that the they, them, those people are us. It could be your family, it could be your daughter, it could be your son, it could be you, that fast. And as the panel is coming up, I want to remind you that because it is the Judicial Summit and we're talking to judges, we do talk quite a bit about violent offenses and people that are in jail and that are in prison. And we also must remind ourselves that in this continuum, the vast majority of individuals who have ever been touched by a mental health issue will never see the justice system. So I just don't want that point to get lost as we go through this Judicial Summit, because we are focusing on that aspect of justice and judges and judicial, that A, this is personal to each and every one of us, and B, just because within our profession here we are speaking to those serious and violent offenses, that we never confuse and make synonymous the term mental health with violence that was mentioned earlier, or going to jail, or those people who need to be watched. Just, we remember that. Okay, having said that, it is my pleasure now to introduce the last panel of the day, not because you're the last panel of the day, but this panel is the actual implementation of and the impact of the intellectual disability or disabled docket, the IDD docket. And I want to thank these panelists, and what they're going to speak to you about are the particularities. I mean, what is outpatient competency restoration and jail-based competency restoration? What benefit can these programs do in your counties? This panel will share the challenges and successes of the multiple OCR and JBCR programs from 3 local county mental health authorities. We were going to be joined by Shana Dante Dallas, but unfortunately there was a conflict and she was unable to make it. So it is my privilege to introduce to you the first panelist today, and that's Jonathan Lemuel. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You're close enough.
Close enough. Lemuel is the director of the jail diversion at Bluebonnet Trails Community Services and has worked for this organization for 17 years. The BTCS serves as the local mental health authority for 8 central Texas counties. His primary responsibilities include liaising between the BTCS and local jails by facilitating the discharge of inmates whose offenses are a direct result of a mental health symptom. He also oversees and facilitates a continuity of care for the BTCS patients at the state hospitals, coordinating aftercare once a person is released from that hospital. Our next panelists, our next 2 panelists are from Harris County. Dr. Krystin Holmes is the program manager of the Jail Based Competency Restoration Program and Competency Restoration Assessment Unit located at the Harris County Jail. She began her career with the adult population in community mental health, spent time in inpatient acute care, and later returned to community mental health to serve the juvenile forensic population and also their families. Dr. Holmes continues her career in outpatient clinic administration and crisis service collaborations with law enforcement. Michele Oncken? Oncken. Oncken, I was close. Forgive me. Began her career as a Harris County Assistant District Attorney in 1994 after graduating from Baylor Law School. She held several diverse positions during her tenure. In her current assignment as the Mental Health Division Chief, she supervises prosecutors who handle the prosecution of defendants with mental health issues, including those who may be incompetent to stand trial, defendants who have been found not guilty by reason of insanity, and defendants supervised by mental health specialty courts. Let's give this panel, our last panel, a large round of applause, please.
So I'm first?
Yeah,
Oh.
yes.
All right, good afternoon, guys. So we're in between you guys and getting to wherever you want to go. So we're going to provide some great information to you and try to get you out of here before 5 o'clock. I don't know how to use this, but I'll try. Oh, it works right there too. Okay. All right, so as Judge introduced me, I'm Jonathan. I do have a new title at Bluebonnet Trails. I'm the Director of Forensic Services there, and I have several different programs. I also oversee our OCR program. So we're going to talk about, implementing an OCR program. Somebody changed it. So the biggest thing with an OCR program is the relationships. You have to have those relationships with the key players to be able to get that program off the ground. So you have to know the prosecutors, you have to know the judges, you have to know, who your audience is going to be when you're going to go present that case to say, I want to bring this guy out of the jail and bring him out to the community and actually try to restore their competency. When you're going to tell a judge something like that and it's a pretty serious offense, most of them are kind of like looking at you like, really, this is not going to work out too well. But in my time there and working at Bluebonnet Trails and working with the judges across our 8 counties, things that we've said we're going to do, we've done. And I can't say all of my diversions have been successful, but even when they weren't successful, I was man enough to go back and tell the judge, hey, this didn't work out too well. I think we need to bring this guy back in. So with being able to do that and talking to the prosecutor, working with the defense attorney, making sure our doctor's on board and everybody that's going to be a part of that treatment team knows exactly what's going on, forging those relationships before we actually go get that person out of the jail, knowing a little bit about them, knowing where they're going to go, and being able to provide all that information and sharing that information with the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney makes those relationships go really, really well. So you have to make sure that relationship is there before you actually start that program. Some of the challenges that we faced with getting people out of the jail, SB 6, with it's a whole beast within itself, and I think we're going to talk to us a little bit about it tomorrow. But when we're trying to get someone out of the jail and they have a serious offense, and they may not have the funds to be able to get out of that jail, so then we got to try to figure out how are we going to get them out of the jail and over to our OCR program so we can help move them through the services. Sometimes we've been able to maybe get a family member to post their bond. Sometimes we're unable to get that family member to post their bond, so then we try to figure out a different option. Also with housing, so some of our clients that have been in there that we're going to get out there have challenges. They've destroyed, those relationships, burned those bridges. So now where are we going to house them at? We do a little bit of housing at our respite center. We try to keep them there for as long as we can. Then we try to figure out where they're going to go out in the community. Because once we've got them restored or we don't have them restored, then they still need another place to actually land at. So we're trying to figure, sometimes we do sober housing or we look for boarding care. Or while we have them in our respite center, we try to repair that relationship with their family so that maybe they can transition back home with the family member. Another big thing there is you got to have client buy-in. And you got to make sure that, if you're working with someone in the jail and you're talking about, I'm going to get you out and I'm going to bring you into my OCR program, everybody wants to come. They're telling you, yes, I'm going to come. I can do it. I can handle this. I'll be where I'm supposed to be. But after doing this for so long, you got to really figure out those people who are really going to actually buy into your program and do exactly what you're asking them to do. And you don't want to get the wrong person out that's saying, yeah, I'm going to do all these things. And then right when you walk out the door, you guys are walking out together, but no sooner they see the light, they take off and you don't see them no more. So you want to make sure you're getting that right person out. You want to make sure that person's on their medications. You want to make sure their symptoms are under control, that you're able to manage them out in a community setting. In the community, the way we do OCR is we transition them from the jail over to our respite center for 7 to 14 days, and then we transition them back out to the community. And then they come in from the community and meet with us at our center, or we take their services out to them in their home. So we want to make sure that their symptoms are under control and we're able to actually get good work in with them, because we were kind of hamstringed to the 120 days or the 60 days on the Class B. There's also a lot of stigma involved in there as well, with family members, and now you're coming in, you're talking about that, and a lot of people don't want to have to deal with law enforcement, and you're coming in talking about the courts, and they have their own opinions. So you're trying to teach the client one thing, and the family's saying something else after you leave. So you have a lot of conflict there. We had a similar case where we were working with the client. I felt like we were getting good traction there, but the mom was also reading it, telling the client, this is what you should plea. And we were trying to educate the client that, you know, you need to talk to your attorney about what you should plead, not your mother. So we had to kind of figure out where we were going with that. I was told I only had 12 minutes. So I created, 12 minutes of talking to you guys. And then I told I had a little more time. So I do have some, if you have questions, I'm prepared to answer those questions, or I can transition over to Dr. Holmes.
I was just curious. Oh, no. Hello, there we go. I knew I wasn't on. I had a question. So you find your people in the jail and you go in and kind of work with them and assess if you think they're appropriate?
Yes. So I supervise our jail diversion team. I have 5 case managers. We're getting ready to hire one more case manager that's only going to do IDD services in the jail. So we actually do those interviews. We see our 46Bs pretty much we were seeing them on a weekly basis, but it seemed like it was kind of getting a little overwhelming there. So we moved to a monthly basis where we see them, we evaluate, we assess, and see where they are. And if they do meet criteria, then we're talking to the judge, talking to the defense attorney, saying, hey, can we transition this person over to OCR and start to work with them in a community setting?
That's awesome.
If there are any questions, please feel free to come up. There we go.
We don't do a lot of the sexually related offenses, only because our respite center is located to a daycare. And then the other offenses, most of the judges are not going to let us have them anyway, even though if we want to try it. And the question was, are there any offenses that we're going to not accept in OCR? So for my program, it's probably the old 3G offenses. Most of those are really hard to get out. The judge is just not going to give them to us, because we're asking for that person to come out and work in the community, and they may have committed a very, very heinous crime. So we're not going to be able to get those out. Murder. We do have one lady working in our program right now for, she has an ag assault with a deadly weapon, but it was against her family member. So the family member was okay with that. Family member actually posted the bond for her to actually get out and come work in our program.
What, if any, do you have in place for employment?
So right now,
on the radar for them at this point?
Right now, I have one client who's actually looking for jobs, and we have a job program there, and I have a great case manager. Her name is Perla, and she is a wealth of resources for our clients. She helps them find jobs. She points them in the right direction. I try to limit too many people touching the client, so I use the case manager for everything. So then that client has that one serious contact that it's a lot easier for them to deal with one person than deal with multiple persons to be able to get the services that they need out in the community.
Two of the biggest barriers that we hear for utilization of OCR in counties that have it is housing, and then just building kind of trust and buy-in across local stakeholders for using the appropriate, determining who might be, or using the program and determining who might be most appropriate. So I know you work across multiple counties for this program, and I'm just curious, what are some of the housing strategies and stakeholder buy-in strategies that you kind of look to?
Well, so primarily we try to use the boarding homes if we can use the boarding homes, if it's an appropriate place for that client to go to and they have the resources to go there. We also use sober living. So if the client may need to be in sober living and it's going to give that extra resource for them to remain stable out in the community, we try to use sober housing. And sometimes we use the TANF money and the other rental assistance money that's out there around the state that we may have applied for to be able to help assist with that. Or we try to do reintegration. I mean, the best thing is to be able to go back home to your family so you have those supports. Is we step back out of your life and wrap around you with all those extra services, and then all of a sudden our time is over with and we transition you over to a regular case manager who's not having all that wraparound, you still need a support where you're out in the community.
Jonathan, let me ask a question. So for as important as it is that we're talking about diversion and moving people out and giving them support on the outside or on the civil side, et cetera, can you comment a bit on how important it is also to say no? Because sometimes perhaps people shouldn't be released. Would you agree?
Yes, everybody's not appropriate for OCR. I mean, and just because an attorney feels like their client is appropriate for OCR, and our clinician says this person is not going to work, the doctor says this person is not going to work, the risk assessment says this person is not going to work in the community. So we do our due diligence to make sure we're going to pull the right person out of there. So saying no, I mean, I say no all the time. I hear no all the time. I mean, any prosecutor knows me. I'm coming to ask for dismissals and declines all the time. So I hear no quite a bit. So.
Good job.
Thank you.
And because of you, now I can split it evenly. Each of you get 15 minutes.
We're going to do it together. And yes, we all thought we had 12 minutes apiece, and then Shana wasn't able to come. So we'll give y'all some time back. So I'm Michele Oncken, prosecutor in the Mental Health Division, Harris County, and the wonderful Dr. Krystin Holmes. And she's way too humble, but our jail-based program is her. She made it work, and it works because of her. And I'm so impressed by it and her, and also has made our OCR program a major success as well with her involvement in the assessment process. I was going to say, just in response to one of the questions earlier about our OCR program in Harris County, it probably wouldn't shock you to hear that, yes, we've had murderers go into our OCR program successfully. We don't have anything near the facility for OCR that would be a barrier like a school with the sex offenders. It really is up to the judge to decide. The judge that you saw here, Judge Ellis, will make that call. But we don't really have anything where we say no to any aggravated offenses, in case y'all were curious.
Thank you, Michele. So Michelle's always super kind about what she says, but really none of this would be possible without the community partnerships. And something that I've heard over and over again today is about the collaborative process. I'm a clinician, I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I'm the touchy-feely kind of person. And so we at the Harris Center just embrace this position of transforming lives. And that doesn't just mean us, that's everybody else. Even if it's not within our service, how can we connect you? So with the DA's office, our public defenders, our defense attorneys, our judges, building JBCR and developing to continue to develop our OCR has really been a big undertaking, and it's been a ton of work. Our team is phenomenal, and that's the boots on the ground as well as everybody in administration. So I just want to preface that. As far as our continuum of services, one thing that we're very fortunate to have in Harris County is that we do have this ability to have a continuum of care. When I was first looking at JBCR and kind of tasked with how do we build this program, looking at, well, we have an inpatient option here. If our patients are able to go to the clearinghouse, right? If they're able to go to the local hospital here, that's great. They stay within Harris County. We have a jail-based program, and then we have our outpatient program. And so the beautiful part of this is that once we started opening those doors to communication, we were able to see, hey, it's possible to move people around. It's possible to take a person that is in JBCR and maybe they're doing well, they're on their medication, they've shown a lot of improvement in insight. Let's step them down into OCR and see how they do. Our OCR program it has a residential component, so anybody coming from the jail is able to stay on site, and that's a huge piece of the equation for a lot of folks. We also have folks that are out in the community already on bond, and they can commute to the program. Programming is Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's an option as well. And it took a lot of the leaders in our community kind of opening up their minds to this possibility. And so without that openness, I don't think we would be where we're at.
And I was going to give a quick shout out. So Denise. So my immediate supervisor, who happens to share my same last name, Denise Oncken, she's on the commission, the Judicial Commission, and she always wants me to say that we are not blood related, so there's no nepotism, but she and my husband are distantly related. Okay, I've said that. But the Harris Center put together an amazing video, and we got some clips from Denise, but we got all of the partners that Krystin mentioned, from people who run our Harris County Psychiatric Center, that is one of our, our local contract facilities with the HHSC, and some of the wonderful people who give the OCR and JBCR, do the program management stuff. Anyway, the video clip is on the Summit Resources page under our information, so please see that full video there. We just didn't think we had time to show it to you today. Sorry.
And if we're giving shout outs, I do have to credit Wayne Young, our CEO, is also here, so I appreciate his support in our programming.
Wayne is the best.
Wayne's awesome. So I think as far as
I think we're good on that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay.
button.
Yeah, and then, well, I mean, this is, yeah, you do the data because it's very impressive.
So for OCR, our outpatient program is something that we were working to build. Like most places, COVID kind of hit us hard with those admissions, and then going through the actual criteria to admit someone to OCR, as Jonathan mentioned, can be difficult. Not everybody is appropriate, and sometimes that's an unpopular opinion. But as a clinician, I have to stand by. Do I think this person is clinically appropriate? That means, are they going to take their medication and be adherent to that? Because OCR does not have the ability to enforce a med order. There's that. There's looking at, well, what is their offense? And not every offense dictates who a person is, right? We have to look at the circumstances of that offense, and we truly take it on a case-by-case basis.
And I was going to say something on that point, Krystin. In our county, this probably will not shock you to hear that Harris County has a lot of violent offenders on bond, and that is a big issue that we are dealing with right now, and a big issue of contention for the safety of the community. But it just is the reality that we're dealing with. So where a lot of people that Jonathan was talking about, he's kind of finding people that are in the jail. I think we would usually assume most people that are incompetent are in jail. We have a lot of people that are out on bond, and in the felony situation, they might have been on bond for years. And so there's something that you can look at as a kind of a tool to see, well, how have they been doing? Have they been violating bond? Have they absconded, et cetera? Or is this person in custody, and are we asking the court to make the leap to let them out of custody? And so ours are a little bit different, because something that we would always say from the state perspective is, well, if they're on bond and they're getting no services, and they're, I don't know, sitting at home or wandering around, I mean, wouldn't they be better in this setting where they have all these, boundaries and rules and help and people that are there to work with them? But maybe that's not always what the defense attorney wants. So sometimes we find ourselves, strangely, the prosecutor advocating for OCR and the defense attorney saying, no, thank you. And maybe it's they think their client's not clinically ready. Maybe they would rather get on the wait list faster, or not be taken off the wait list. Because right now, if you're going to go to OCR, you have to be taken off the wait list. They maybe are afraid if their client fails, they go back down to the bottom. So things like that I know the lawyers are considering.
Awesome. Excellent points. Those are all, from the legal side of the house, that are important considerations that us on the clinical side of the house don't often think of. So for those of us that are clinicians, that's why it's important to have those collaborative relationships where you can say, hey, I don't understand this point, or can you talk to me about what these options are? We truly want what's best for our patient, regardless if that's state hospital, jail-based competency, or outpatient competency restoration. We want to get them to the best fit and really water down that wait list to the people that really, truly need it the most. So with OCR, and this is all fiscal year 2022 data we just completed, they have a restoration rate of 69%. Average length of stay is 61 days. They have 16 beds currently right now, with 54% being residents and 46% being commuters. What I like to highlight is the fact that we have half of those folks really are coming out of the jail. So they're transitioning from the jail into OCR, and then we do have a mechanism in place to where if they, need a place to stay, they've got it. If they come from jail, they go in a residential status. And then the safeguards that we have. So for those folks that are leaving the jail, most oftentimes, not all, but most oftentimes they're outfitted with an ankle monitor, and that helps to track if they do abscond. And we've had it happen. OCR is not a lockdown facility. There are no officers or guards. There's no one that's going to like prevent someone from leaving, and the staff is not chasing folks down. And so what we're doing is building these relationships. We do a lot of work in the jail before they ever leave. We talk to them about, okay, what does this mean? Please know that it will be worse for you if you abscond from OCR, so please stay where you're going. It's a beautiful place. They've got barbecues and picnics, and honestly, I'd kind of like to go there. My office is in the jail. It doesn't have great windows like OCR does, so I guess I'll ask if they have any openings. But I'm just kidding. But they have a wonderful, beautiful setup, and so we want to get folks used to living back in the community, because we don't want folks to have this institutionalized mentality that doesn't translate when they leave.
And I was going to say one thing about the safeguard, the GPS ankle monitor. Again, a shout out to Wayne Young. And I think this is the big thing, is that because, I mean, we all know each other. And so even though we're different disciplines, I mean, we all have worked together. We're on all these different little, committees. And I mean, I see Wayne at least once or twice a month on a Zoom meeting, maybe not always in person, but I mean, we know who we can call and talk to and text and ask questions. So that's wonderful. But Wayne offered, he said, okay, do you think that it would be helpful for us to pay for the GPS monitors, because they're expensive? And if the court is going to say, well, I will let this person out of jail to go to this program, but I don't feel, I'm not sure, I'm not comfortable. Maybe they're going to abscond. I don't know if the offense is too violent or too serious. And then what we come back with is, but this could be a safeguard that could be the reason that the prosecutor or the judge feels comfortable, or we could tell a complainant, this is what's going to happen. And so we'll know where this person is. They even help us make sure that the GPS monitors are charged and whatnot. There's assistance from the OCR staff. But to have that where part of some grant funding was utilized to be able to pay for that and figure out kind of how to earmark those, and the bill goes to our LMHA, that's been wonderful, because I think that that's something that makes everybody feel a little bit more comfortable, that we know where this person is going to be or supposed to be, and we'll get an alert if they're not.
Sure. Okay, and then, so for Jail Based Competency Restoration, our JBCR program, we welcomed our first patient January 26th of 2021. So we're a fairly young program. In our startup, we just completed our first full fiscal year of data. We ended with a restoration rate of 93%, an average length of stay of 55 days. Total beds right now, we're sitting at 20. We have great visions and plans for growth, which we hope are going to come to fruition at some point, because there's a need. We have a very large wait list. I mean, right now it hovers at around 250 folks, and that's just for Harris County. So, we're all here because of a large wait list issue. We've served 52 folks last year who were on the MSU list. And that's a big metric for us, because those folks really would have been stuck waiting for that maximum security unit bed, and they didn't need it. They did not need it. And when I ran some numbers a different way, I was kind of curious about this MSU number. So I started kind of data mining and doing what I do and going way too deep into spreadsheets. And I ended up realizing that less than 1% of our folks that go through JBCR that are admitted actually go on to still need that state hospital MSU bed. And so that was a big deal for us, that we were able to serve these individuals, we were able to get them moving through the process, and now that frees up a bed space for someone else. And we take that one person at a time. So that was a big deal for us.
And that was a big deal for us. I know Denise and I both, we had the conversation that if jail-based was going to work, that we didn't want it to be limited or exclude anybody, but just from the get-go, but to look at each case, like Krystin said, case-by-case basis. So our good friend, Chris Lopez from HHSC, we asked him, okay, Chris, you're like the legal guru. Do you think that there are any limitations in the law that prevent us from being able to do this? And he, no, I don't. And so we called around to some of the other jurisdictions. Some were doing it, some weren't. And one, I can't remember which county said, we had this debate, and the prosecutor felt like it was okay to include MSU cases. I think maybe the group as a whole decided against it. She was like, that's not what I wanted. And so we were kind of obnoxious about it and fought for it, because the whole thing is, what is more what's a more secure environment than the jail, right? And so we just thought it made sense. I mean, they're already in the jail, or maybe they're even, sometimes, like we said, on bond. But I mean, the whole goal is that, like Krystin said, because we could have somebody waiting a year, 18 months, 2 years for an MSU bed, maximum security unit. Thanks. So that was a really big deal. So we're talking about, like Jonathan said, aggravated offenses, murder, aggravated robbery, rape, sexual assault, anything, the most violent of the offenses. So understandably, yes, they should be in a secure unit. But again, if they're in the county jail, and that is what they're designed to do and understand how to do safely, is have those individuals there. And so, of course, Kristin's group has their pod there and are able to do that really safely. But I think that's made a huge difference. And from her data mining, I think that panned out.
Yeah, one of the questions that I found I was asking a lot, because I'm a clinician. I wasn't coming from necessarily a legal world. I'd worked in juvenile forensics and then with the CERT team. And so that was like my understanding of legal at that point. And so I was always like, but why? But why? Why? What about this charge? Why this? Why that? I'm sure Michele was so annoyed with me because I was constantly asking questions of, well, why does this matter? Why can't we have this? And so, because our goal was like, well, let's treat everybody. If we send them to state hospital, as we've discussed, some folks are not, they really aren't appropriate to be in the community because they're manifestly dangerous. That's why we have the Dangerousness Review Board to say they need this maximum security bed. And so in that sense, it was like, well, they're here. Let's treat them while they're here. If they still need that bed, well, fine. At least we've tried. And so being able to work with these individuals, a recent highlight that I can think of, we get our state hospital wait list for Harris County that comes out, and we had restored a patient who was number 1 on the list, and he had sat in jail on the wait list for 770 days, I think total 800 and something. And that's not to slight our jail partners, there just wasn't the space available, and he had moved his way up and up and up, and we managed to get him restored, and it took 53 days. So it took 53 days of someone's life, and he spent 770 days in jail. And it was a big charge, it was a murder charge, and regardless of what side of the fence you're on, right, this program can work for everyone. Because if you want to get everybody out of jail, we're in support of getting people out of jail that shouldn't be here for this long. But we're also in support of accountability. And so if we're in this intersection of accountability and awareness, because without the awareness of where you're at, what's going on, there can be no accountability, and that's not a service of justice to anybody. And so my team, our focus is, where is your best fit? How do we help you move on? And even if we know by restoring you to competency that your next stop is going to be TDC, you're probably not going to get out of this one. How then do we best prepare you for your life moving forward? What do you need to handle here in Harris County with your family, your friends, whoever, so that way, if that's the ultimate stop for you, you can go there eyes wide open, knowing everything. So we don't lie to our clients either. We really try and prepare them for what their next steps are, because clinically, that's what we feel is best to do, is to really give them the best opportunity to move forward and make decisions in their life. And then just collaborating with our community partners. One of the great things that we have, you saw earlier, our judges, we have a wonderful felony mental health docket, but we also have a felony mental health court staffing competency restoration docket staffing, which takes place on usually Thursday or Friday. And in that meeting, it's a very informal staffing, but it's a time where if we have cases, if OCR has cases, we put them on the list for staffing. Our court coordinator, who's fantastic, notifies all their attorneys that, hey, your client's on the staffing list, please show up to the Zoom meeting. And the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, pretrials there. We have OCR, JBCR, probation's there. Yeah, we have a ton of folks that really sit and discuss, okay, this client, what's best for them? What's coming down the pipe? Have we done this? Have we done that? We had a gentleman in OCR that clinically he was appropriate, but we were seeing some cognitive things going. We're like, is this dementia? What's going on with them? And we were able to get approval to get a neurocognitive assessment, neurocognitive battery assessment, which if any of you know how expensive those are. It was approved by the court to get him tested. And ultimately it was found that he does have dementia, no longer appropriate for competency restoration services, and we were able to get him into like a nursing home type facility. So when you have a court and you have partners that are willing to be collaborative and get on board with you, you can do big things.
You want me to take these?
Yeah,
Okay.
lessons learned.
And she's so good. She's got it on her phone here. Well, and I think that right here, the first key point is kind of what Krystin was just saying about Judge Ellis had referred to during the last presentation about how he basically handles all of the NGRI cases and all of the competency restoration cases for the whole county, all 23 courts. As soon as somebody is found incompetent, it comes over to his docket. And then we also have specialized prosecutors that work there. That's where you get this little tight team that Krystin was describing. And so I think having that centralized location, we were looking for uniformity and knowledge. And somebody like Judge Ellis, obviously doing this forever, has tons of knowledge and cares about the cases. The same thing with the lawyers on both sides and all of the wonderful clinicians and all the staff. And like Krystin said, the weekly court staffings in addition to docket. Zoom was, I mean, we got over it during COVID, right? We were all kind of over Zoom in our sweatpants, but it's such a great tool now that we can use. And now it's like, well, even though you're in Austin and you're in Dallas and you're in Houston, whatever, now we can just jump on this meeting and not only see clients, see each other and be able to really do a lot of good stuff. And so, like Judge said, that's free, just the communication and having people talk to each other. And I think the assessment process has been huge, and I'll let you talk about that.
So one piece of what was successful for us was having an assessment. So one misconception is that when people get added to the wait list that they were just automatically eligible for our programs. We at OCR and JBCR are an assessment and referral based program. So that means the attorneys have to be on board and agree to a JBCR OCR assessment, and what that allows us to do is have a gatekeeping process. So right now we're a 20-bed program. Could you imagine if anyone ever was just allowed to sign a patient into JBCR OCR in Harris County? We'd be exploding. We couldn't handle it and provide the quality of services that we wanted to provide and maintain. So with that assessment process, it allows my team to go in. We assess each and every single person individually. We look at their criminal history, their mental health history. We look at legal history. We consider a lot of factors, and then we go, okay, is this person best served at state hospital? Are they best served in JBCR? Are they best served in OCR? And so when you look at it from that perspective, it allows you to consider the person, one, as an individual. You don't just consider their crime, you consider everything else, the crime that they're alleged of. And so that's really an important piece of allowing us to make sure that we have a little bit of gatekeeping within our program, and it's not just a free-for-all, because that would be really bad, I think, for everybody.
And I was just going to say, from the legal aspect, the assessment is not required legally, but it's been, like Krystin said, an amazing tool that has really helped make sure that the right people are going into the right program. And what we've also done is basically, as soon as the case comes to the mental health prosecutor and they know, okay, this person has been just recently committed, okay, now we're going to immediately go into the assessment process. And when we first started Jail Based, it was a little me like, kind of like down everyone's throat, like, you will, dude, at least be assessed for Jail Based. And now it's just automatic. And so they'll look at both options and see which one is the right fit. But it's something that we just automatically do. And then we also generate an order for that assessment. And that's what lets them know, okay, patient, XYZ needs to be assessed. And that's just, again, it's not required legally, but it is just the trigger for them to start that process.
It definitely helps with tracking. People, they really don't know what all we can do in a jail. And so sometimes I talk to defense attorneys that maybe aren't in, they're not already in our mental health docket. They've retained private counsel. We welcome those guys too. Like, they're welcome to the party. And when we speak to them, they'll ask, well, what do you do in that program? Like, well, we do yoga. We can do yoga in jail. We do yoga. We do recreational therapy with games and all sorts of things, because when a person's playing Uno and I beat them really badly at Uno and they're not throwing cards at me or cussing me out, that's clinically relevant information. It is. I'm documenting that the patient was appropriate when losing at Uno. And so, but we also do the best purchase we ever made in JBCR was our projector, because we watch court-themed related movies and we do cinema therapy, and we stop and we ask, well, what's this person doing? What's that person doing? Who's this role? So there's a ton of things that we actually can do in a jail, and credit to our sheriff's office, because I will ask them for some kind of off-the-wall things and they're like, okay, we'll go with it, like, take it back out when you leave. But they've been instrumental in just helping us have a designated space to meet with our patients, to provide security staff and consistent security staff. So when they have a problem, their first line of defense is not to go hands-on. Their first line of defense is to come find us. They'll call me and say, hey, send a counselor up because so-and-so needs to talking to, and so we send them up and talk. And so these things can be done in a jail when you have folks that are willing to think outside of the box and to go in directions that may be non-traditional for a correctional setting.
And then the one thing that she had documented on there is addressing misdemeanors. And so at some point, you had decided that maybe you would designate some beds specifically for misdemeanors, and they had kind of decided that 4 would be a good number. And I think that is important because the misdemeanors have to move so fast, right? The Class Bs, which we really try to avoid putting a Class B on the wait list at all. And with our diversion programs, luckily we don't have to, but the Class As, you have a little bit more time, but we have to be really cognizant of that. So I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah, one thing that's important if you are running any type of like competency restoration program or just programs in general is being willing to pivot and be honest about what your data is telling you at the end of the year. Sometimes your outcomes may not be what you want. Sometimes your outcomes tell you different things. And so for us, it was very easy for us to go, you know what, about 15 to 20% of our caseload was misdemeanor. Let's go ahead and designate these beds. Now, we don't ever have beds that are empty. If we don't have any misdemeanors on our list, then we automatically throw in a felony. But the minute a misdemeanor pops up and a felony comes out, in they go. And we do that consistently to where those misdemeanor beds are moving through because they have a time constraint that felonies really don't. So it's fair. We weren't trying to slide anybody. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
4:24?
You got a question.
Oh, perfect.
Got a question on the internet. It says, do we have any data on how many people with IDD or unrestorable diagnoses, neurocognitive disorder, TBI, etc., are on the MSU list?
That is a wonderful question for our HHSC partners. But as far as Harris County, we don't exclude IDD. What I can speak to IDD is that we don't exclude IDD. If there's profound IDD to the point that it would, again, where they best served, then we would refer them to the place of best service. But we do continue to work with IDD. There are neurocognitive and TBI folks, and when they do pop up, we try and make sure that, hey, if this is somebody that we refer back to HHSC, which they've been great about, hey, can you review this person? There's some things that have changed. Just because a person has mental health doesn't mean they then cannot have dementia, that they can't have some other medical condition they've developed over the course of their life. So we want to consider all those factors. Yes, sir.
You talked about the hearings that y'all have. I thought maybe you said weekly, and so those that y'all decided not to be an OCR or your JBCR, how do you have those weekly for those people? Or are they on a monthly basis, or?
So we do an in-person docket once a week, and generally speaking, that's going to be all of the competency restoration people who are being handled. Either they're on the front end, or maybe they're having trouble during their restoration period, or their post-restoration. We're waiting to get them to trial or a plea. And then once a week, we also have a staffing, which it's frankly because there's no courtroom available, so it's just a Zoom staffing, but it's going to be all the lawyers, no clients there, but it's a great time to bring up any kind of case at any level or stage of the CR process.
The hearing one, are the clients brought up, or are they Zoomed there, or how do you do that?
When we're physically in court, yes, the clients are there. The ones that are on bond are in the courtroom, just like a normal courtroom, and the ones that are in custody are in our holdover attached.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that they also do a lot of Zooming with clients that are, and even before we knew what Zoom was, pre-COVID, they were using Skype to do recommitment hearings and stuff. I mean, we didn't want to bring patients from Rusk or wherever, and, to have some instability happen.
And then the last page is just some highlights, and I won't go over every single thing because that's obnoxious. But what I would like to highlight is that we, again, in the spirit of being creative and using the technology that we have, something that we found getting patients to the point where they're communicating with their attorneys, because part of restoration is knowing who your attorney is. And a lot of times, especially, we've had people transfer from court to court to court. And so they're like, I really don't know who my attorney is. That's not because they're incompetent. They have not met this person. And so we implemented what's called a client attorney structured engagement program. And these are case sessions. And that's where my staff sits with the client, that's usually on their caseload, and they meet with their attorney via Zoom, and it's not to discuss any privileged communication. We don't want to know any of your plans like that. We don't want that. All we want to do is facilitate this introduction process, say, hey, this is your client, here's a snapshot of how they're doing right now, so that way the attorney can then be like, well, here are the things I'm concerned about, or do they know this and know that? And that helps us course correct right in the middle of treatment. So it's a really valuable process. It doesn't cost us anything to do except a little bit of time. They're about 15 minutes in length. And so that's been a huge piece to help us work towards building those relationships with our defense attorneys.
And it's a huge piece to help the defense attorneys know how their client is doing and not be shocked at 60 days that, well, no way can my client be better, and they are, and it helps that they've had that time to see them, so it helps both sides a lot.
Are there any more questions? Very well. Well, then, with that, oh, there may be one. I saw your hand go up. No, okay, she pulled it back. All right. For that, let's give them a big round of applause.